Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope your day and your week have been going very well so far. Got a new day, which of course means a new MLB Player Prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I have 4 MLB player props to go ahead and share with you guys in today's MLB slate. But first, guys, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how I did last night. And if you guys could not tell by the thumbnail, we finally had a absolutely stellar night. A 4-0 sweeperoonie last night, guys. By the way, if you are watching today's video at this point, again, thank you very much for clicking on today's video and joining us for today's MLB slate. Comment sweep down below if you are watching today's video with me here. It's been a rough start to the year. We can go ahead and show you guys the overall record. It's not been pretty, all right? Even after our 4-0 performance last night, we are now 18-25 thus far in our single bet category in MLB Player Props. We won 2.23 units. Again, a massive night last night. We are still down a hefty amount of units on the season. It's a long road to getting back to break even, but days like yesterday, they definitely go a long way to getting us there. So again, we've had a rough start to the year, although I told you guys in yesterday's video, I feel like we're going to start getting this little hot run going now. We were so cold. What goes up has to come down, and I guess what goes down doesn't have to go up necessarily, but 4-0 last night. I'm feeling really confident coming into today's slate, so comment sweep down below. I'm not breaking out the money gun here. Normally for a sweep, obviously I would, but I'm going to refrain because we have been so cold this year. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I don't want to be out here like an idiot celebrating when we're down over 8 units in our single bet category. You got to take the wins when we can get them, but I want to build on that solid performance last night before we start celebrating and breaking out the money gun. So 4 more player props coming your way right now. Let's keep the good times rolling and win some more money. Jumping right into the outlier screen, guys, our first player prop in today's slate comes from the Arizona Diamondbacks Miami Marlins game, 12:10 p.m. first pitch. We've got Josh Naylor of the Arizona Diamondbacks over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. We're getting this one for -110 over on BetMGM. It is available on multiple sports books for varying odds. As always, guys, you have to make sure you go ahead and shop around for the best sportsbook odds available. Looking down below at this Josh Naylor prop, the data is pretty solid across the board here. 7 of his last 10 games, he cashed the over. That's, of course, a 70% hit rate, averaging 2.7 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 10 games. Now, you go ahead and look at the entire season data for 2025 thus far. Again, pretty solid, 13 out of 18 games. That is, of course, a 72% hit rate, averaging 2.5 hits, runs, RBIs per game this year. So pretty good data across the board, even from a head-to-head perspective, pretty solid. 3 of his last 5 matchups with the Miami Marlins, he's cashed the over. That is a 60% hit rate, averaging 2.6 hits, runs, RBIs per game across those last 5 matchups. Some of them, of course, taking place last season. He's played them 2 times so far in this series this year. He's had 2 pretty solid games here the last 2 days. With both games, he's having 4 hits, runs, and RBI. So pretty good numbers here across the board for Josh Naylor. The insights provided by Outlier, by the way, shout to Outlier, the sponsor of today's video. If you guys like what you see here, all the information, all the data, we do offer a link down below in the description that gives you guys a 7-day free trial to go ahead and check it out for yourself. Make sure to utilize that link. There's so much that Outlier provides, including special insights like this one and so much more information. You want to have a good sports betting tool by your side, especially when it comes to betting MLB player props, and Outlier is the best that money can buy. So make sure to utilize the link down below in the description to get your 7-day free trial. Special thank you to Outlier for sponsoring today's video. The insight provided by Outlier, Josh Naylor has exceeded 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 7 of his last 9 games, averaging 3 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 9 games. Again, kind of reiterates what we just talked about, but just another sort of narrower, I don't know if that's really a word there, a more narrow view of how good he's been of late. Now, looking down below at the key matchup stats here for Josh Naylor, we finally have, like I mentioned yesterday, Outlier updated to their 2025 numbers. So we have all modern data. We're not using anything from last year. We're using all of this year's data. Now, the downside of that is we do have very small sample size because we are still just a couple weeks into the season. So some of these things are going to look inflated or very decreased from what they normally should be. But in this case, Josh Naylor having a very solid start to the 2025 season in Arizona, 328 batting average overall versus right-handed pitchers now. Again, only 53 plate appearances, but in those numbers versus right-handed pitchers. 400 batting average thus far this year with a whopping 219.6 WRC+. Those numbers are obviously very solid. And then looking down below at the matchup here with Edward Cabrera, 3.18 ERA, 190 batting average overall. Actually not having a terrible year now. 24 batters faced. He's basically had, one or two starts. But versus left-handed batters, again, only 14 batters faced versus lefties. Very small sample size. But 6 ERA, 250 batting average allowed, 3 home runs per 9, and a whopping 404 WOBA. Again, not a ton to go off of there, but from what we have here from a data standpoint, Josh Naylor's been playing really well. Cabrera versus left-handed batters with only 14 batters faced. But in those matchups versus left-handed batters, he has struggled this season thus far. So I think across the board, it's a really solid matchup here for Josh Naylor, and minus 110 odds too. You really can't beat the value. All right, guys, next up, our second player prop in today's slate. We're moving on to the Nationals-Pirates game, 12:35 p.m. first pitch. We got Ke'Bryan Hayes of the Pittsburgh Pirates under 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, which we're getting for minus 105 odds over on BetMGM. Again, available on multiple sports books for varying odds. Now, the last 10 game data is okay. 5 of his last 10 games, he's cashed this under a 50% hit rate, averaging 1.7 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 10. You do go ahead, though, and narrow it down to the last 5 games. 4 of his last 5, he's cashed this under. That's an 80% hit rate, averaging 1.2 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 5. So far this year, a 53% hit rate on this under. 9 out of 17 games, he's cashed the under, averaging 1.71 hits, runs, RBIs per game this season. So like I said, not the best data, but pretty solid overall. Look at the head-to-head numbers. 4 of his last 6 matchups, of course, dating back to last season with the Washington Nationals. He's cashed the under. That is a 67% hit rate. And he's averaging 1.67 hits, runs, RBIs per game over those last 6 matchups. Now, 3 of those 6 matchups have come this year. So far this season, 1 out of 3 games against Washington, he's cashed the under. Again, the last 2 games he's cashed the under. April 14th, he did have that big game there, 2 hits, 1 run, and 3 RBIs, and what was a 10-3 win for Pittsburgh. If we look down below at the key matchup stats here, Ke'Bryan Hayes versus Trevor Williams. Small sample size, 3 plate appearances since 2018, but pretty good numbers, obviously. No hits off of him, no home runs, no RBIs. He struck out once in those 3 plate appearances. So like I said, small sample size, yes, but still something to go off of there. Ke'Bryan Hayes so far this year, 203 batting average with a 65.6 WRC+. Not the best starts of the year for Ke'Bryan Hayes. Now versus right-handed pitchers, small sample size. I'll keep saying it over and over throughout the video. Small sample size. But the numbers, even though they are increased, still a little on the lower side. 220 batting average, 83.2 WRC+. Again, it is better than his overall numbers, but still, 220 batting average, 83.2 WRC+. Those are still not fantastic numbers. Now, looking at Trevor Williams, overall, he's not having the best start of the year either. 7.36 ERA, 3.71 batting average allowed, 3.96 WOBA. However, versus right-handed batters, the numbers are significantly better. 4.50 ERA, 192 batting average allowed, a whopping 186 WOBA, which is really low. So really good numbers when facing right-handed batters. It just looks like when he faces lefties, he gets absolutely railed. But again, it's so early in the year. The batters face only 27 right-handed batters. Faces a pretty low number. He's only had a couple starts under his belt. But the numbers versus right-handed batters have been pretty solid. Good enough where I'm willing to go ahead and take the under here on Ke'Bryan Hayes. Again, he's cashing it more than half the time. It seems to be across the board a pretty good matchup. And for minus 105 odds too, I think it's pretty good value to go ahead and take the risk. Now for our third player prop in today's slate, we're moving on to the Guardians-Orioles game, 6:35 p.m. first pitch. We're going Jordan Westburg of the Baltimore Orioles under 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. We're getting this one for minus 115 odds over on DraftKings. Again, available on a variety of sports books for varying odds. The data is certainly better on this player prop than the previous one. 8 of his last 10 games, Westburg has cashed this under, averaging just 0.8 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 10 games. Looking at the entire season view for Jordan Westburg, a 64% hit rate on the under this year. He's cashed it in 9 out of 14 games, averaging 1.64 hits, runs, RBIs per game this year. And you do see he had one really big performance there back on March 29th against Toronto where he had 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 RBIs. That's kind of skewed the data a little bit. The most of the time, though, he's cashing the under in a lot of games where he's just not recording a single stat in those 3 categories. So pretty good numbers there from a head-to-head standpoint, too. 3 of his last 4 matchups with Cleveland, the majority of those taking place last season. He's cashed the under. That's a 75% hit rate over their last 4 meetings, averaging 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs per game across the last 4 matchups. Now, they played 1 time so far this year. Or I should say he's played Cleveland 1 time this year, just yesterday. Not yesterday, the 15th, so a couple days ago. He had 0 hits, 0 runs, and 0 RBIs. So, pretty good head-to-head data. Kind of a smaller sample size from a head-to-head standpoint, but still across the board, some pretty good numbers. Even his last 5 games, he's cashed it in 5 straight, averaging just 0.4 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 5 games. Looking down below at the key matchup stats, again, and also the insight provided by Outlier, Jordan Westburg has failed to exceed 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 4 of his last 5 games at home, averaging just 0.8 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 5 home games in Baltimore. So something to keep in mind there. Now, in terms of the head-to-head matchup versus Tanner Bibby, the starter for Cleveland, 3 plate appearances since 2018, 0 hits, 0 home runs, 0 RBIs, 0 OBP, meaning he has never gotten on base when facing off with Tanner Bibby. Now, again, for the millionth time in this video, small sample size, but still pretty good. 66.7% strikeout rate. He struck out in 2 of the 3 plate appearances against Tanner Bibby. And again, Westburg not having a great start to the year. 196 batting average overall, 88.5 WRC plus. Versus right-handed pitchers, you do see a slight decrease in his batting average to 186. Really bad numbers. You do see a slight increase in his WRC plus when facing off with right-handed pitchers. But overall, he's just not having a great start to the year in terms of hitting. And I do think it's worth taking his unders here until he proves us wrong. Now, Tanner Bibby's numbers are not great, and that's the one concerning thing about this matchup. He's off to a really rough start to the year. Overall, 4.40 ERA, 2.55 batting average allowed, 2.5 home runs per 9, and a 3.81 WOBA. But it gets worse because versus right-handed batters, you see steady increases in all of his numbers. 5.59 ERA, 270 batting average allowed, 2.8 home runs per 9, 405 WOBA. These are not minor increases. The only minor increase is the home runs per 9, but even in that category, 0.3 is a pretty massive increase with taking that statistical category into consideration. But pretty steady increases in all those numbers. So, again, only 44 batters faced, so take it with a grain of salt. But he's not having a great start to the year, and he's especially struggled versus right-handed batters. However, Westburg is just having as equally bad of a start. So it's a matchup of who's going to continue their cold streak. I have more faith in Jordan Westburg continuing to stay cold than I do in Tanner Bibby not being able to turn it around. Also, one of the most important things here is the pitch arsenal. Now, we do have it updated for 2025. So this is not using last year's numbers. This is this year's numbers so far for Tanner Bibby. He utilizes the fastball heavily so far this year. Almost 40% of his pitches have been fastballs. Looking at Jordan Westburg, 132 WOBA. That is not very good. 21.1% strikeout rate. So it's good for us, not good for Jordan Westburg, who overall this year, again, 22.6% strikeout rate, 284 WOBA, not fantastic. But versus the fastball, he has struggled, and obviously it's the pitch that Tanner Bibby relies on the most here. So really solid matchup across the board here, and good odds too. And finally, guys, our 4th and final player prop in today's slate. We're moving on to the Royals-Tigers game, 6:40 p.m. first pitch. We got Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals over 1.5 total bases. Again, really solid value on these player props today, minus 105 odds. Over on DraftKings. It is available on multiple sports books for varying odds. And the numbers are solid here. 6 of his last 10 games, he's cashed this over, averaging 1.9 total bases per game over his last 10 games. So far this year, a 58% hit rate on the over. 11 out of 19 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 1.84 total bases per game so far this year. Now, from a head-to-head perspective, we have a really solid sample size. These two obviously being division rivals. This is the first time that Bobby Witt Jr. is facing off with Detroit so far this year. But 9 of his last 13 matchups against the Tigers, he's cashed this over, averaging 2.77 total bases per game across the last 13 meetings with Detroit. So really large sample size in terms of a head-to-head matchup and really good data. That is, of course, a 69. Pause for applause. 69% hit rate this year for Bobby Witt Jr. In terms of head-to-head over the last 13 matchups. With Detroit. So pretty good data. The head-to-head data is really intriguing here on this player prop. And looking down below at the key matchup stats, it just gets better and better. Bobby Witt Jr. versus Reese Olson this season. Excuse me, not this season. Sorry, guys. Not this season. Since 2018. 13 plate appearances since 2018. Maybe that's an easier way to go ahead and tell you what I'm trying to say. Little brain fart there. Since 2018, he's had 13 plate appearances against Reese Olson and had a lot of success in those 13 plate appearances. 545 batting average, 538 OBP, 1.364 slugging, 6 hits, 15 total bases, 4 extra base hits. So really good numbers here against Reese Olson. Bobby Witt Jr. so far this year, 310 batting average, 351 BABIP, 183 ISO, and 40.9% extra base hit percentage. Now, versus right-handed pitchers, those numbers do all decrease this year, but even at the decreased line, these numbers are still really, really good. 286 batting average, 327, BABIP, 38.9 extra base hit percentage. So across the board, yes, the numbers are decreased from his overall numbers, but they're still pretty solid across the board. And looking at Reese Olson, his numbers are not great, but they get even worse, which is good for us. When facing off with right-handed batters, 7.88 ERA versus righties this year, 310 batting average allowed, 379 slugging, which is a decrease from his overall numbers, but still pretty high. And extra base hit percentage is kind of on the lower side, honestly, at 22.2. But I still think across the board, it's a good matchup. And Bobby Witt Jr. has had a lot of success in his career against Reese Olson. That's our fourth and final player prop in today's video. Guys, thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. I'll be back tomorrow with another MLB Player Prop video. We have our Freaky Friday 5-leg parlay coming your way tomorrow. Until then, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Thursday. Let's go ahead and make some money.